Hello and welcome to episode 55 of the SU Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Manning, and today we're going to be talking about tooting your own horn, blowing your own trumpet, aka talking about ourselves and the stuff that we've done. So I'm doing this episode because I keep coaching on it in different, slightly different guises, and it's obviously something that some of us, maybe all of us, need to be able to do at work at times, talk about our work and the stuff that we've done and who we are. And if we can do that confidently, great. And if we can't, maybe that's giving you a little bit of trouble. So if it is, stick with me for this episode. So before we get started, I want to tell you about something which we have coming over at SU Coaching. And I coach one-on-one, and I have run programs in the past as well for people. But I have a new offer coming, and it's going to be released in September, but it should be available to purchase, I think, hopefully from next week. And it is a digital confidence coaching course. And I take everything that I've learned over the last 5 years about what erodes confidence and what builds confidence. And I've put that into a framework, the Confident at Work framework. And I've done kind of training and coaching modules on all the different pieces of that so that you can use my brain in your own place, in your own space, at your own time, and for a fraction of the cost that it costs for individual coaching, because I know that that's not accessible for everybody. And yeah, so this coaching course is designed to give you the benefit of all the learning that I've done and all the results that clients have got in the past 5 years, and just really be able to use that in your own time and in your own place to help you grow your confidence at work. So I'll put details in when that is up for sale, and it's going to get released at the beginning of September, so it's going to be like a back to school thing. And I'm excited to have a new offer for you guys. So on with the episode. So thinking about tooting your own horn, blowing your own trumpet, which is otherwise known as talking about yourself and the stuff that you've done and the work that you do. And there's times when we have to do this. So if you think about things like interviews or pitches for new work, if you have new client meetings, or let's say you're asked to be the face of something, then there's those kind of formal times when you actually talking about yourself and the work that you do and the stuff that you've done and the successes that you've had and the things that you've achieved. That's going to be very much part of one of those processes. So in order to do any of that, I hope that you're feeling confident doing that, talking about yourself and the stuff that you've done and the success that you've had. But I know from my work that some people do find that tricky. Some people do find that difficult. So I wanted to focus this episode on that to really help you to think about what's going on for you if you're finding that difficult and how you could possibly make it a little bit easier. So there's times, like I said, when you have to do this, like interviews, pitches, new client meetings, stuff like that. But there's also times when you might want to do it. So there are also times when you might want to share, well, I just, won this piece of work, or I just finished this particular deal, or, whatever it is, you might want to share that, whether that's with your colleagues, with, other people in your workplace, whether that's with other people in your industry. Maybe you want to be able to talk about something that you've done in social media land. Maybe you want to talk about it on LinkedIn. Maybe you just want to be able to send an email to other people in your workplace. Or maybe you want to kind of tell other clients, oh, look, here's something great that I've worked on. So to help to show people what it is that you do, what it is that you care about, what your expertise is, and be able to say, yeah, this is something that I've done, and maybe even this is something that I could do for you. So there's loads of reasons why you would want to be able to talk about yourself and the stuff that you've done. And I think I've thought about the reasons why this can be difficult for us. And I think there can be personal aspect to it. And there's also, I think, a societal aspect that can make it hard. And those two things can be inextricably linked, right? So when I'm coaching on this, I ask people all the time, like, how do you feel when you think about, talking about yourself, or when you think about sharing something? How do you feel? And the kind of things that people tell me are, cringe. I feel like really cringe, or I feel reticent, or I feel uncomfortable, or I feel embarrassed. So when somebody tells me that, or if this is you, and when you're thinking about talking about yourself or your work, you're like, you've got one of those kind of feelings, there's something going on. What's going on? You're having a response in your body that feels like, a pulling away, like a constricting, a cringe. What's happening? And I thought about this from the clients that I've coached, but also thinking about, what could be going on if I was cringing and I was embarrassed and I was feeling like, oh God, like I don't want to do this. This is awful. And I think there's a few different reasons that I could come up with. And one of them is that maybe for you, for whatever reason, it hasn't actually been safe for you to put your head above the parapet before and say, haven't I done well? This was a really good piece of work. This is something that I'm proud of. Maybe in your life, it hasn't actually been safe for you to do that. Maybe it's been safer for you to keep your head down and not draw attention to yourself and, stay kind of under the radar. Or maybe, and it could be either or, maybe you've been taught something in the past and you're possibly believing it, or possibly you've just absorbed it as something that kind of sits in the background and has an impact. Something could be like, nobody likes a show off, or you shouldn't boast. Have you been told anything like that in the past? And if you have, you might be linking talking about yourself and the work that you've done with boasting, with showing off. Possibly even in the past, maybe when you were a kid, or maybe at another time. Maybe you've even been chastised for doing that. Maybe you've been told off. Maybe you've been put down or cut down when you've spoken about something that you've done or something that you're proud of, or the work or the result or whatever. Possibly all of us have been in the past, right? Don't brag. Nobody likes a show off. Don't be a tall poppy. And all of that can kind of, even if something was a really long time ago, it can kind of worm its way into our subconscious and just sort of sit there as a rule that we might even be unaware of. So this, nobody likes a show off. It's not okay to show off. Now, imagine that rule is just kind of sitting somewhere dustily in the back of your subconscious. But it's something that you've been told, or maybe that you're believing. You've absorbed that messaging. So anything that feels like showing off to you is going to be difficult for you to do. So if you are equating talking about yourself and the work that you do, or, something that you've achieved or something that you're proud of, if you're associating that with showing off, and you have this sort of belief or this rule embedded in your brain somewhere that nobody likes a show off, aka do not show off, you're going to find it difficult to talk about yourself and the work that you do. Because when you try to do that, you're coming up against something which is like a belief or a rule or just something which is like imprinted in your unconscious mind. And then when you try and do it, you're going to think, oh, you're going to pull back. You're going to feel like, oh my God, this is so cringe. This is embarrassing. This is not safe, whatever. So just think about like what rules are there in your head about talking about yourself, about boasting, about showing off? What were you taught about that? And could it be that some of that is still hanging around? Could it be that some of it is still having an impact on you without you really knowing about it? And could it be that that's what's making you cringe? That's what's making it difficult for you to feel just confident and calm when you're talking about yourself and the stuff that you've done? So that's like the messaging that you kind of absorbed. And sometimes that can just be sitting in the background and you won't really even notice. The stuff that we unearth in coaching sessions is brilliant. They'll be like, well, this one time when I was 6, I got really told off for talking, right? And it stayed with me ever since. This stuff is real. So think about that for you. It could be some absorbed messaging or some kind of rule that you've got hanging around, which makes it really difficult for you to talk about the stuff you do, the work you do. Or it might be something that you actually believe yourself right now. So it may be that you actually think that it really isn't appropriate for people to quote unquote boast. Or it really isn't appropriate for people to draw attention to themselves for the work that they've done or for the successes that they've had. That might be a belief that you hold. And I make no comment either way about whether that's a belief you should or you shouldn't hold. That's entirely for you. But if you want to be able to talk kind of confidently and calmly about your work and the stuff that you do, just know that could be having an impact on it. It could be having an impact on it. If you're believing that people really shouldn't do that, of course it's going to be difficult for you to do that. It might make you pull away. It might make you say, well, actually, I don't really want my name on that. It might make you say, oh, well, it was all my team and I didn't really do anything. And that really catches people out, or it can catch people out in interviews. When they're asked, what did you do? And they say their team did everything. Well, of course, you never did everything on your own. That's not the way anything works. But sometimes you have to really be able to talk about that. And if you can't, because you don't believe it's appropriate for some reason to to show off or to boast or to take credit, then that might be a reason why it's difficult for you to talk about yourself and the work that you do. The other potential thing, and I've seen this before, is you might be judging people who do talk about themselves and the things that they've done. So you might kind of cringe or judge people who say, oh yeah, we did this, or I did that, or my team did this, or we've had that success. You might be like, oh my God, what a show off. Right? And again, I make no comment about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But if you're doing that, just be aware that if you're judging somebody else for it, you probably are going to find it more difficult to do it for yourself, because depending on your opinion of the person who already does it, you might be thinking, even if this is subconsciously, well, I don't want to be one of those people. I don't want to be one of those people that's like talking about the stuff that they've done and sending an email round and like bragging on LinkedIn. Like, I don't want to be one of those people. You might not be thinking that consciously, And there's also the possibility that if you're judging them and then you do that thing that they're doing, like you talk about that thing that you did on LinkedIn, you're going to then judge yourself. You're going to be like, oh my God, what the hell? You're such a show off, blah, blah, blah. Which again makes it less likely that you're going to actually talk about yourself and the work that you've done, right? So imagine that you felt completely just comfortable, fine, confident, talking about yourself and the things that you've done. What would you be believing? What would you be thinking about talking about yourself and the things that you've done? I'm going to venture a guess that the first thing is that you wouldn't even be thinking of it as tooting your own horn or blowing your own trumpet or boasting or showing off. You're probably going to be thinking of it in a way that feels a lot more neutral. What would you be believing if you were confident to just talk about yourself and the stuff that you've done and share your successes, etc.? You might be thinking, well, it's okay for me to do that. I can do that and it's a safe thing for me to do. It's what I need to do, or I deserve to be able to do that, or it's just the truth of what I've done. You know, I'm not dressing it up. It's just the facts. Because you've got options. You could, let's say you really want to be able to do this, or you need to be able to, in certain situations, talk about yourself and the work that you've done and the successes that you've had. You've got options. You could either white knuckle it and kind of force yourself to do it while you're still kind of cringing and feeling really, really uncomfortable. That's an option. You could just force it out of your mouth. I'm sure that you'd be capable of doing that. But the other option is that you take some time to understand, like, why do I actually feel that way about speaking about myself and the things that I've done? What's actually going through my head, even if I'm not really that conscious of it? What am I thinking about people that talk about themselves, or whether that's okay? Like, what am I thinking and believing? And I've given you a few ideas in this, and that might have triggered off some thoughts for you. But it might be different for you. What you're thinking or what you've been taught might be completely different. So maybe just explore it. And maybe there is a different way of thinking about it that still feels okay to you. So I coached a client on this a long time ago, and their thought was, do not be boastful. It's not appropriate. But they had to put their name to something, and they didn't want to. They felt uncomfortable doing that because they felt like it was boastful. And when we explored it, she realised that it wasn't boastful, it was helpful. Because when her name was on it, people would know who to come to. They would know who that kind of central coordinating point was. And that was a completely different way of thinking about it. She wasn't thinking that it was boastful anymore. She was just thinking, it's actually just helpful. So for you, there might be a completely different way of thinking about it. Like, for instance, one of the things that I do is I share, clients give me testimonials when we're finished working together, or like reviews, and I share those on LinkedIn, or I share them with my email list or whatever. And I hadn't really even thought of this, but some people could say, oh gosh, that's like boasting about, well, I think of it as the client's results, not mine. So I suppose maybe that's a difference. But people could think, oh, well, that's boasting. She shouldn't be talking about that. It's showing off or whatever. But I just think, well, if other people see this, they and they're looking for help with their confidence, they'll know there's something I can do and there's somewhere that I can go. And that makes me feel fine sharing those. So you can see that depending on what you're thinking and believing about something, you're going to feel completely different. I had a client who I coached not long ago, a little while ago actually, on and tooting her own horn was one of the things that she said she needed to be able to do and she just could not do. She was like, it's 100% cringe. I cannot do it. And when we looked at it at the beginning, she said, it's going to be... that's going to be a really difficult thing for me to do. And I emailed her when I was doing this episode and said, have you got anything, you want to share with people? And she said, yes. What she realised when she started, and she still does call it tooting her own horn. She's fine with that now, with that phrase. But she said, it's not actually as bad as you think it's going to be. When you do it, it's not actually as bad as you think it's going to be. So she did it and she found out that actually it wasn't terrible and awful. It was fine. And that made her, I would imagine, feel more secure doing it the next time. But she also said, and this is a big thing, that if I don't toot my horn, nobody else is available for horn tooting for me. I'm the one. I'm the only one. Like, if I don't do it, maybe no one else is going to do it. Which could be true for you too, right? I mean, it's certainly true for me. Right? I work alone. I'm not going to have a boss that's going to toot my horn. I've got to do it myself. But also for you. Many of us, I think, were taught, work hard, keep your head down, and you'll be rewarded. But, and that could happen, right? But a lot of the time, and in our kind of modern workplaces, I think you have to be an active participant in your own progression and in your own, if there's opportunities that you want, if there's projects you want to try, if there's teams you want to lead, if there's ideas that you've got, if there's, promotions that you want, you have to be an active participant in that. If you just work hard and keep your head down and nobody ever knows that what your successes are or what you want, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, it could, but I think it's a lot less likely. So, what will you do going away from this episode? What are you taking away? Is there anything that you're going to think about differently? Is there anything that you're going to try? Because I'm sure that you have done lots of interesting things that are worthy of a mention. And I'm sure that you do lots of good work, which other people would be happy to celebrate with you and to acknowledge you for. So, will you talk about yourself and the work that you've done? And will you model that for other people? Will you model that for the next generation that are coming behind you? Being able to calmly and confidently talk about you and the stuff that you've done, the successes that you've had, even the failures that you've had. Will you do that? All right. That's all I've got for you this week, guys. And again, the digital coaching course, I'm so excited about it. It should be available to buy from next week. I think I'm getting the tech set up now. It's an online purchase. You can just click and purchase, and it's going to be released in September. And I'm going to do a special bonus for the early adopters, which is that you're going to get a free coaching call with me to coach on any aspect of confidence or whatever it is you want some coaching on. for anyone who buys before the course is released in September. So it's quite a limited time. But yeah, I'm excited to get that out and to have it in the world. And I tell you what, it's requiring confidence from me, doing this thing, because it's different than what I've done before. It's putting all of my learning and all of my ideas and a process that I've created that helps people to grow their confidence out into the world, not just in a one-on-one environment or like in a very small group environment, but it's like putting it out there online and allowing it to like live in the world as its own thing and have people take it and use it and grow their professional confidence. And that feels big for me. And it's kind of taking me to the edge in terms of my comfort zone. In fact, it's outside of my comfort zone. So if any of you are outside of your comfort zones at the moment and listening to this because you are focused on growing your professional confidence, well, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.